Okay, this is another reading from my new novel, Motorcycle Girl Descends into Hell. This is I'm going to read the intro to the book's middle section and its longest and most important section on the history of the burial of the dead, starting from the Paleolithic all the way down to Egypt and Mesopotamia. So it covers the entire Paleolithic, Neolithic, and those two civilizations, ways in which human beings have thought about the burial of the dead. Since this is a book about a descent into hell, then it is perfectly appropriate to have this section, a section on the burial of the dead. This is actually, it's part 4, but I've left that off because it seems I want it to look more like a tombstone, a very severe and very deliberate and stern. This is my drawing of my cover of Paul Klee's painting Death and Fire, one of his great works of art. And then, so I'm going to go ahead and read the intro to this because I think it's very intriguing. Now, what I've also done too, as you will see, is that as you go through this middle section, it alternates with the daughter reading the father's black notebooks with all of his notes on different burial practices and what they signify and how they change, with sex scenes. So it goes back and forth between her having sex with her boyfriend and her girlfriend, and then back and forth, eros, thanatos, sex and death, sex and death. Those are the two biggies that we have to deal with here, incarnate on this rock. Okay then. Hey, that's cool. What are you working on? Cute kid, about 18 or 19, plain black t-shirt, jeans that haven't been washed in a while, generic sneakers with holes in them, black hair, crew cut with a dark goatee, neatly trimmed, eyes the color of a muddy rain pool. Standing in the late afternoon sunlight at Coffee Plantation, looking down at my pastel drawing, turquoise tables with heavy iron chairs, twilight air, gold and lavender, with curling dragon shapes of cigarette smoke floating past. Kid goes by on a skateboard, looking up at him. You like it? That's fucking badass, he says. You just drew that yourself? I did. So what is it? It's my version of a painting by the great German artist Paul Klee. It's called Death and Fire. Like, what's it about? Have a seat, I say, pushing the metal chair with my tennis-shoed foot his way. I notice his eyes gliding up my smooth, bare, coffee brown legs. Well, it's about the pilgrimage toward death. The old man with the walking stick is heading for the setting sun, just like he's about to make a night sea journey into the underworld. And then look back at her. This is the old man here with the walking stick, late in the evening of life. Oh yeah, right, like when the hero goes down into Hades, like in the Odyssey. That's right. The crescent moon waxes and wanes like those dying and reviving gods. You know, Osiris and so forth? Those guys. So it symbolizes time, and the sun is eternal like the soul. It's undying. Takes out a cigarette, puts it in his mouth without lighting it. It bounces up and down while he talks. Right, yeah, that's cool shit. And in German, the word for death is Tod, spelled T-O-D. That's what the moon's mouth and the two eyes spell out. Tod. Look back at it. T-O-D. And then, way cool. And then he does it again. Look, the horizon is in the shape of a T, and the sun is an O, and the entire moon is a D. Look back at it again. Here's the T, here's the O, and the moon is the D. Oh yeah, wow, that dude was crazy. And he's got the 4 elements, each represented with its own color. The brown over on the right is earth, over here. Let's see where the orange sky with the sun is fire, the turquoise color on the left is water, and the pink in front of the moon is air. All 4 of the classical elements. That is just plain cool, he says, lighting up his smoke. The tip glows crucible orange in the semi-darkness. But that's not all. Look at the sun. It's gold-colored, like the gold of alchemy, or the soul itself. The stick figure guy is the pilgrim searching for the pearl of great price. What's that? Have you read the Gilgamesh epic? I have. You go to ASU? I do. What are you majoring in? English Lit. Ah, now that makes sense. Well, remember that in Gilgamesh he's searching for his own soul, and the plant of eternal youth that he dives down to get it. It's actually not a plant, it's a pearl, the symbol for his own soul. What makes you think that? Because he does exactly what the pearl divers of Bahrain still do to this day. They tie a rope to one foot and put clothespins on their noses and dive down with a basket. Oh, on the island of Bahrain, that's Dilmun, right? The sacred land where he's going to find the flood hero. Yep, but he's really searching for his own soul. He just doesn't know that because he's a warrior, not a shaman. That is excellent. You know your shit, girl. Sarah. You know your shit, Sarah. I'm Damien, he says, spelled with an E, like the Hermann Hesse novel. I shake his soft, pink, warm hand. It feels as alive as an electric eel in my palm. What are you reading in class right now? Let's see, James Joyce, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Is it good? It's fucking awesome. Joyce, I mean, man, that guy knew what he was doing. Just fucking rad. Who else do you like? Faulkner? You ever read him? No, but I've heard of him. We read As I Lay Dying a ways back. That was a mindfuck. I'll have to read Joyce and Faulkner sometime. Crime and Punishment, too. That was great. Are you a writer or something? Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I want to be a great writer like Joyce and Faulkner. So you want to write real literature, not bestsellers? Fuck yeah, man. Flicking his ashes into a gray tray that he's hijacked from another table. What about great women writers like the Brontes? Do you like them? Oh, hell yeah. Wuthering Heights was intense. Exhales a blue-gold cloud of smoke that hovers and glows in the evening air like fairy dust. Doris Lessing's good, too. We read Shikasta. It's this cool science fiction epic about alien beings who are sent on missions to Earth, which they call Shikasta, meaning the broken one. They incarnate as human avatars. Oh, that sounds really cool. I want to read that one. You go to school? Nah, I say I'm mostly self-educated. My father was a scientist and my mother was very well educated. I was homeschooled. Grew up on a military base. Ah, so you're an Army brat. Air Force. You ever fly? Yeah, I've been up in a helicopter. It's pretty wild. That must be cool. I'd like to ride in a helicopter sometime. A swarm of night people have gathered around us as though they've emerged from a fog, sitting at the tables, laughing, joking, talking. Phantoms. Mostly college kids. Pink and blue neon bar signs are lighting up on the buildings around us. You live around here? I ask him. Yeah, I'm in the big dorm, Manzanita Hall. Ever been there? No. Want to? It's 15 fucking stories high. My room has this totally great view. I study his pretty Adonis face in the charcoal twilight. And then, let's do it, bursts out of me, stubs out his cigarette. I tell him I ride a Honda motorcycle. Cool, I'll ride on the back, he says. It's not far, just around the corner on University. Manzanita Hall is a fucking epic-sized dorm. I had a girlfriend when I was in college who had a room in Manzanita Hall, so I'm writing from experience here. Very, very tiny rooms, though. They're unbelievably small. Basically, not much larger than walk-in closets. A very large stereo is parked in the right-hand corner of the room. He takes out a record, Nirvana's Nevermind. This is set in 1993, so that's about when this album came out, or a little before that it came out. I think their last album, In Utero, came out in the latter part of 1993. You like Nirvana? I stare at the baby swimming in aqua blue water on the cover. I haven't heard them that much, but I like what I've heard. Oh, you gotta listen to this, motherfucker. Sets the black vinyl disc on the stereo, then delicately places the needle on the record and steps back. Want to get stoned? Yes. Oh, you got pot? Hell yes, let's get stoned. Smells like Team Spirit. That should be Teen. I just caught that. That should be Teen Spirit. Smells like Teen Spirit engulfs the room with dense layers of heavy metal guitar riffs. Kurt Cobain's voice is milk chocolatey delicious. I want to fuck that voice. I want to fuck this guy's voice, I say out loud after exhaling a nuclear mushroom-sized cloud of pot smoke. He laughs. What about me? There's only a single lamp on a side table next to the bed, which sprays the room with faded carbide photons that create weird German expressionist shadows on the walls and ceiling. Oh yeah, I say, sliding off my shorts and black cotton panties and sitting on the edge of the bed, legs spread open wide for all creation to gape at the delicious pink slit of my swollen vulva. Come and get it, I tell him, and he smiles with red, stoned eyes and then crouches down between my legs and does amazing acrobatic feats on my clit with his tongue. I have a really sensitive clit, so I come fast on his face with a series of small seismic tremors that make my legs shake. This guy really loves eating pussy and he won't stop. He just keeps at it and at it and at it, and surprised he even likes to drink pussy juice, as I discover when I ejaculate into his mouth with 1, 2, 3 squirts, and then I'm empty. Wow, I say, breathing raggedly, you make me come really hard. That's some tongue you've got. Well, I'm to please, he says, beginning to unbuckle his belt. Now it's your turn, I say evilly. Let's see what you're packing in those jeans. After I drain his balls and swallow down yummy semen, we're both spent. Semen is my favorite treat. We lie together on the bed listening to Nirvana play Drain You. Perfect. Back at Coffee Plantation with Father's black notebook. It's early in the morning. I'm drinking Colombian coffee with half and half. Coffee is what the earth must taste like in liquid form. Warm, rich, heavy with dirt, silt, sand, and mud, dense with tiny little earth particles that your tongue loves. Coffee is a very good thing. I think we take it for granted. I'm the only one present at the patio tables, lemony sunlight frosting everything in a layer of fresh, vivid lucence. Huge blackbirds are hopping around the tables, pecking at tiny bits of food only they can see with their charcoal black bird's eyes. Didn't Wotan have two sacred ravens who whispered secrets to him? What were their names? Millie and Vanilli? That's an 80s joke. Only people who grew up in the 80s are going to get that joke. In the notebook, he's beginning a new section on the history of death and burial. This should be interesting. Then it goes to the father's notebooks now for the first time. We're about halfway through the novel. And so we begin with the Paleolithic dead. And so this will do a kind of dance back and forth between the two hemispheres, the right brain versus the left brain, the humanities, heckling the sciences. So it goes something like this. And the father has his own font. I picked that up from Faulkner. As I Lay Dying, that novel, I read that in college in the 80s. Each character has their own unique first-person voice. So it's sort of like that. This is the father's voice, the typewriter font. He's typing this out on an old-fashioned pre-electric typewriter. The earliest evidence for the burial of the dead goes back about 300,000 years ago to a cave in Atapuerca, Spain, which the archaeologists named Cima de los Huesos, or Pit of the Bones. Deep inside the cave, they found a hole in the ground where there were the remains of about 30 individuals who had been thrown in, all adults, so it could not have been the result of a cave-in. These were the ancestors of the Neanderthals, known to science as Homo heidelbergensis. Keep in mind that caves have been regarded as entrances to the underworld all the way down to the Aeneid, in which Aeneas has to pluck the golden bough of mistletoe in order to enter the cave that leads to Avernus. And then she's got a picture over here of Atapuerca and the Pit of the Bones, and she says, in the womb, the body is built up. In the tomb, it disintegrates. It's a cycle. You end up where you began, right? And then here we have, this is a map of Palestine circa 100,000 years ago. And the green, there's 4 green marks. Those are modern Homo sapiens. And the 4 red marks are Neanderthals. And so they're competing, obviously. They start burying their dead at about the same time. So there's already tension in Palestine before modern Homo sapiens even arrived into Europe circa 40,000 years ago. Neanderthals and modern Homo sapiens seem to have begun burying their dead right at the same time. Essentially, the father is me, because this is based on an old manuscript that I wrote where I took notes, and these are the notes that I took on the history of the burial of the dead. So it's not that much of a throw to imagine us going back and forth. When the girl was alive, when she was my girlfriend, we would do this dance, go back and forth. I would tell her cool stuff, and she would make funny little comments. So it's really, again, it's a duet. Neanderthals and modern Homo, and also keep in mind that the father is in the role of Virgil. He is her guide through the realm of the dead. Neanderthals and modern Homo sapiens seem to have begun burying their dead right at the same time, as though they were marking territories against each other. This all takes place in Palestine right around 100,000 BC or so. And then we have this. This is the earliest Homo sapiens burial that we know of so far. The next earliest burial that we know of dates to about 120,000 years ago and is found in a cave in Palestine known as Kasseh, with the bones of about 15 other individuals. She is a female Homo sapiens, modern, which archaeologists rather unimaginatively named Q9. She is in a flexed fetal posture with no grave goods and an infant buried at her feet. She and the infant are both completely dusted with red ochre, a substance which will be used for burials all throughout history. The Chinese will substitute cinnabar for it. It is very likely meant to symbolize menstrual blood, since it was known to the ancients, Aristotle in particular, that the reason women stop menstruating when pregnant is that they are using that blood to build the body of the fetus. So it is the regenerative power of the goddess which is invoked to build a new body for the dead soul to inhabit. After that, the next earliest burial comes from another cave in Palestine called Kabara, dating to about 60,000 years ago. It is a Neanderthal, which the archaeologists named Mashi, or Moses. The Neanderthals did not normally use red ochre for their burials, although they did use it for body markings and also in their cave art. The only peculiar thing here is that the top half of Mashi's skull has been removed. And then she looks at it and says, "Looks like Mashi had a pretty good dentist." His teeth are perfectly intact. I mean, that's fucking crazy. And then here. What's interesting here is that later on in that same part of the world, at the site of Jericho, one of the earliest villages, dating back to about 9500 BC, there was a practice whereby the top half of the skull of a dead person was removed and then covered with lime plaster and cowrie shells inserted into the eye sockets, as though to reanimate a revered dead person. And then she goes, "This guy didn't have such a good dentist." No, he didn't. The teeth are gone. She's a little bit like Alice from Alice in Wonderland. Alice is always going, "I wonder why the three angles of a triangle don't add up to 180 degrees when you put it on a curved surface." Stuff like that. Between the years 35,000 to 29,000 BC, there's not much evidence for burials amongst modern Homo sapiens, who used to be designated Cro-Magnon man. But this is precisely the time of their so-called creative explosion. It is now known that Neanderthals were doing cave art about 60,000 years ago, which is at least 20,000 years before the arrival of modern Homo sapiens in Europe. Around 36,000 years ago, modern Homo sapiens are creating their own very innovative cave art at the site of Chauvet in France. And then she's looking at this and goes, "Who ever heard of a herd of lions?" This is also, I have to say, give a shout out to Finnegan's Wake. My favorite chapter in Joyce's Finnegan's Wake is the chapter when the twin brothers are studying, and there's a main narrative, and then on the side, the other brother is making jokes, heckling the other brother, going back and forth. So it's kind of where it comes from. In Germany, however, they're inventing the earliest sculpture around 40,000 years ago. This is pretty extraordinary to me, too. Look at this thing. You could tell it was a fucking masterpiece. There was nothing like it, and then all of a sudden it's just there. The shaman man lion found in a cave at Hohenstein-Stadel dates from this period, and indeed is one of the earliest known works of art. Dude, this thing is fucking crazy. The first skinwalker? Now that Navajo skinwalker will matter, because it becomes part of the plot later on when she goes to visit the Navajo and the Hopi. And at another German site, Fogelherd, about 35,000 years ago, they're creating tiny sculptures like this woolly mammoth, which is carved out of ivory and is only 3.7 centimeters in size. They're miniaturizing the mammoth and wearing it as jewelry, because now the mammoth is their bitch. Yep, pretty much. During this period, from 35,000 to 29,000 BC, no modern Homo sapiens burials have been found, so it's unclear what they were doing with their dead during this time. They might have been putting them in trees, as some Indians used to do. Neanderthals, meanwhile, continue burying their dead in the same old conservative fashion down to about 30,000 BC. The Neanderthals as a whole are mostly extinct by 25,000 years ago, probably hunted and genocidally cleansed by the modern Homo sapiens. The last we hear of them is the burial of a 4-year-old modern Homo sapiens Neanderthal hybrid child, most likely the result of a rape, who is 4 years old in a cave at Lagarvello, Spain, where we first encountered the proto-Neanderthals at Atapuerca. And then here is this child laid out. This skeleton was laid out on an east-west axis with the head pointing east and was thoroughly stained with red ochre. The skeleton exhibits characteristics of both species, or rather subspecies, as they were obviously not reproductively isolated, such as short legs, characteristic of Neanderthals, and a slight brow ridge. It is apparent that Neanderthal humanity was, at this time, in process of being genetically as well as culturally absorbed into the invading modern Homo sapiens population. When the burials of modern Homo sapiens resume, they are very different from what they had been in Palestine at Kafse. For one thing, now they're known as status burials, which is exemplified by a much later burial from the island of Teviec, off the coast of France. Though the burial dates from around 7,000 years ago, it is a direct continuation of the type of status burials that were being practiced by modern Homo sapiens about 29,000 years ago. This is a grave of two women, approximately 30 years of age, both of whom exhibit traumatic wounds to their skulls, yet they were buried with reverence and care beneath a roof of antler horns and with seashells spread all around them. Jewelry made out of seashells adorned them in the form of necklaces, bracelets, and ringlets for their legs. And there it is on the left there. It's a beautiful reconstruction, a three-dimensional reconstruction of that grave. And she says, "Wow, reindeer goddesses that live at the bottom of the ocean? Mermaids with antler horns? Crazy!" And then over here we have the next earliest burial of modern Homo sapiens in Europe comes to us from the so-called Pavlovian culture of Moravia, which was a Gravettian society of mammoth hunters who did not live in caves, but rather in freestanding huts made of mammoth bones with round wooden roofs. And then she goes, the first teepees? Which probably is the case. It's my theory that the Native Americans who came across and later built teepees, the whole symbolism of the teepee is that it has 28 poles to correspond to the 28 ribs of the buffalo. So they're living inside the body of the buffalo, which I suspect has replaced an earlier cosmology in Paleolithic Europe, where they were imagining themselves living inside the body of the mammoths. There's a definite continuation. And as this chapter unfolds and we go through all of this Neolithic history, you will start to realize just how conservative the Native Americans have been about preserving culture forms from all the way back in the Neolithic, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 BC, and so forth. These people buried their dead in a number of ways, such as in trees or on wooden platforms, but their shamans were often buried by digging shallow pits into the frozen ground and then covering them up with earth and stones. The burial we're considering here is from Brno, dating to about 25,000 years ago, and is generally considered the oldest known burial of a modern Homo sapiens shaman. This individual had been wearing a cap with more than 600 dentalium shells carefully sewn onto it, and a variety of animal bones were interred with him, including the shoulder blade and tusk of a mammoth, the skull of a woolly rhino, its ribs stained with red ochre. That means they're going to reanimate it in the afterlife. A reindeer antler and some horse teeth. Also worth noting was the presence of a unique little doll, carved out of movable pieces of ivory of an apparently ithyphallic individual, probably meant to be his astral double. The fact that this individual was crippled with severe periostitis tends to support the theory that he was a shaman, since shamans are often physically disabled. This continues all the way down to the motif of the crippled blacksmith, such as the Greek smith Hephaestus or the German smith Wieland. And so here it is, the shaman face, the erect phallus, and there's a drum that was buried with it too. She says, do shamans get hard-ons when they dance? Like, doesn't the penis become erect during REM sleep when we're dreaming? I wonder if that's the same thing. About 23,000 years ago, at the mammoth hunting site of Dolní Věstonice in Eastern Europe, we come to a very strange burial. The people of Dolní Věstonice lived in huts constructed out of mammoth bones. At this site, 3 individuals were buried together, one woman between 2 men. The man to her left was turned over onto his stomach, while the other man on her right had his hands placed into the woman's lap, which was sprinkled with red ochre. The man lying on his belly had a wooden stake stuck through his pelvis. The woman had the fragment of a reindeer's penis bone placed in her mouth. And she too suffered from disease, namely rickets and scoliosis. The grave had been covered with a kind of wooden shell. This was very likely the grave of a shaman woman, buried perhaps with her 2 paramours. That's some threesome action going on there. They are taking it with them. And this is also a foreshadowing of an upcoming sex scene, which will involve her participating in a threesome with her 2 friends. Thus, the picture that begins to emerge here of these earliest modern Homo sapiens burials in Europe could hardly be more different from that suggested by Neanderthal burials. The bodies, for one thing, are laid out flat on their backs, whereas those of the Neanderthals are usually flexed. They are also covered with red ochre, whereas Neanderthals rarely used red ochre for burials. Furthermore, whereas Neanderthal burials tend to be of lone individuals, these modern Homo sapiens burials tend to feature more than one individual. Thus we have status burials, which imply the existence now amongst Upper Paleolithic people of a hierarchically stratified society in which some individuals are indubitably thought to be of more value than others. Time for the next sex scene. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Dead Can Dance, within the realm of a dying sun, blasting its synthesizer keyboards out of Damien's stereo. They're playing the first song anywhere out in the world, stoned out of our minds, the music invading every single cell of our bodies. I remember I had that same college girlfriend who was just absolutely enraptured with both Nirvana and Dead Can Dance. On the floor of his dorm room, both of us completely naked, got my ass up in the air. He's on one knee behind me, both hands on my smooth ass cheeks. "I like your nice big round ass," he says. His hands are warm and loving. "You can slap it if you want. I've been a bad girl lately. I need to be punished." Whap! "Now the other cheek needs to be punished, please." Whap! "Now why don't you fuck it, please?" Pauses to make sure he heard me right. "You mean anal, or?" "Yeah, why not?" Looking back over my shoulder at him as seductively as I can. "You ever done that before?" "Nope." "Go on, slide it in, but you gotta go slowly." I feel the head of his penis lightly tap my anus. Then it stops and begins to become more explorative. The head slowly invading, and then ouch, I yelp as the glands pops in. "Sorry, I'll go slow." Pulls it out, and then puts it back in, sliding all the fucking way up in there, and damn, that's good. Oh, fuck yes, it feels so fucking good. His cock is all the way up into my rectum, all snug and warm in there. My rectum likes his dick very much as he pulls out slowly, smoothly, deliciously, then plows in again with more rhythm, picking up speed, my asshole loving every second of it as his cock goes spelunking and explores a whole world up inside there, in and out with long, languorous strokes of his 6-inch cock, not too big so it doesn't hurt so much. He starts going faster and faster and faster, and I feel like crawling up the fucking wall with pleasure, moaning, and then he announces his orgasm, "I'm gonna come," with a huge animal moan as he squirts once, twice, 3 pumps of semen up into my dark, hungry little hole, which just laps it up like some voracious animal hungry for delicious, milky, sweet, salty semen. He slides out of me, and I at once turn around and put it in my mouth, licking off the semen together with the ass juice. A delicious combination. Actually, more people should try this. "Damn, that was good," he says out of breath. "Yeah, you gave my ass one hell of a drilling there," I say, smiling, lying on the floor, propped back on my elbows, looking up at him. "You liked it?" "Loved it. I almost came. An assgasm. I've heard of them, but never had one." "Maybe next time," he says. "Yep," I say. "Now it's my turn." Pointing down at my luscious pink pussy with my legs spread wide and my seductive brown eyes inviting him in. He eyeballs it for a second, smiling faintly, then dives down in, and that's the soul descending into the physical body. Everything in this book has some sort of an esoteric, hermetic, or mythological reference. Nothing is random here. This is the soul descending into the body via the portal of the genitals. The genitals are what bring the body into being, so they're absolutely essential instruments for the form makers, which is what Steiner calls the angel beings, the form makers who create physical forms. They specifically use the genitals as their instruments, their paintbrushes, you might say, painting on the earth, the genetic canvas. You get Mozarts who can master the genetic keyboard who get in there. But this is the fall, sinking, and capture of the soul into the physical body, which it gets seduced into via the genitals, and then back to the dance of the burial of the dead. So I'll leave it there for that. It's quite extensive as it goes through the different transformations of death and burial. Some of this stuff is amazing, like Karahan Tepe, which is a site I didn't even know about when I wrote these notes probably 20 years ago. And then, of course, Göbekli Tepe. So we just go step by step, stage by stage, and note that the pillars that are rising up out of the ground, they're meant to symbolize penises that are coming up out of the ground with their power to generate forms. These are animal forms that these shamanic phalluses are generating on the physical plane. That's what I think is going on here. This wonderful boar emerging out of the underworld. The sculpture at Göbekli Tepe and Karhan Tepe is absolutely mind-blowing. For it to be this early, 10,000 BC. And they also invented the totem pole. Here it is, the world's first totem pole. And it's just one revelation after the next. This book is just full of revelations that a lot of people don't know anything about, because academics don't do this. They don't take risks and interpret the archaeological forms that they dig up, because they're afraid they're going to get reviled in case they're wrong. Their entire careers, their tenure, everything is at stake if they are proven wrong. So they have no imagination whatsoever. So you won't get this reading the books that I read to make these notes, but I drew my own conclusions from them, using Gurtan and Spenglerian morphological principles to do that. I'll finish off with one. Let's see. Well, maybe I better not. This is this is going to be known as the cock monologue. It's imitating Hamlet doing his monologue on to be or not to be. Only it's a cock monologue. I won't read it, but for those of you who want the book and the revelations that the books contain, these are very serious books. This is not frivolous stuff here. I'm not pissing in the wind here. These are very serious revelations that come through in this book. Stuff you won't find in Christianity, that's for damn sure, with its condemnation, its complete condemnation of the genitals, and you won't find it in academe with their trepidity at interpreting culture forms, but you will find it in a motherfucking John David Ebert novel.